Welcome to this event in partnership with Syracuse University. My name is Stefania, and I will be moderating this webinar on behalf of Doxity. So I see here that our first participants have joined us, so a warm welcome to all of you. We are just going to wait a few minutes before we dive into our session to ensure that everyone has a chance to connect. In the meantime, don't hesitate to say hi or introduce yourself in the chat. Furthermore, we're curious to know where are you joining us from, so please take a moment to share your location here in the chat on Zoom. And thank you for being here. We will start shortly. So in the meantime, I wanted to inform you that we got a Q&A lined up after the session. So this is your chance to ask your questions to our panelists. So don't be shy, go ahead and type your questions and curiosities in the Q&A box. We will be thrilled to answer them. And if you're interested in receiving the certificate of attendance issued by Doxity, stay tuned because we will give you more information after this session. So now, talking about the lineup, in today's webinar, we will talk about Women MBA and the global marketplace. As you can see here, I will not be alone. So with me, there is a rich panel today. We have with us Dr. Shri, Assistant Director, Graduate Recruitment, Syracuse University's Whitman School of Management. Also, we have Madeleine Rabi-Bernard, Digital Strategy and Planning Officer at the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees. And last but not least, Miriam Kvantaliani, Finance Manager at Amazon. So thank you for being part of this event, and thanks to all of you. And without further ado, let's get started. Shri, the floor is yours.
Stefania, thank you very much. This is great. As always, it's a pleasure to collaborate with Doxity. And today's webinar collaboration for me personally is a pleasure as well as a privilege that I get to see my former students, at least virtually, through this webinar. And I want to have a good conversation to take you through not only their experiences at the Whitman School of Management while they were pursuing their MBA degree, but also give you a little insight into their prior motivations and work experiences and educational experiences that brought them on this journey. So Madeleine, Mariam, good to see you, and thank you very much for agreeing to do this. It's like old times, isn't it? It's going to be good.
Yes. And thanks for having us. Thank you so much. It's such a pleasure to be doing this with you.
Yeah, and I wanted to add, before we get into our little details of how we had worked out the plan on discussing the rich content that we want to share today, is to start out with, we are in different time zones. So of course, technology is great. And the webinar itself is being hosted from Italy. Madeleine, you're in Copenhagen. Mariam, you're in Luxembourg City. And I'm currently on travel in India. So this is truly a global environment and a representation of how business operates these days. Right? So nothing is static anymore. Nothing is situated only in one location. It's not localized. It is globalized and also globalized. So I think it's a perfect panel to start out in a perfect setting. So let's start with a little bit of introductions. And because Madeleine is a little senior to Mariam, I'm going to begin with her as the senior alum to join this panel. Let's go to a little deeper introduction with, giving us your maybe trajectory with your educational background and then how you actually came to the MBA.
All right. Okay. So I grew up in Chennai, in India, and I trained as a computer science engineer. And if I look back at my life now, like 10, 12 years of work experience, educational experience, I think one word that will summarize it is random, because I've been everywhere, I've done everything. And I think I'm in a space now where I've found what I think is my niche. But from my engineering degree, I think I wanted to try something different than getting into core engineering. So I attempted the civil service exam. in India. And it's a competitive exam. It spans over the period of a year. And it was a grueling process, but I think it was a huge learning experience for me, and an absolute privilege to have had that experience at 20 years of age, 21 years of age. The end of all of it, luckily for me, on my first attempt, I got through all of the stages. And then when the rankings came out, I missed placing by about 1 percentage points of the total mark. So, I mean, at that time, it was devastating. But what it did is it gave me an opportunity to really think about where I wanted to go and what I wanted to do. And I I knew at that point that engineering wasn't for me, that I wasn't particularly talented in that field. And I wanted to pick something where I could really focus my strengths on and then probably learn new things that will help me achieve better results. And I joined my father, who was starting an agricultural venture at that time. And I joined him to learn the business, to learn what we could do, what innovation in agriculture looked like, and how that could really make a difference in society, especially given that a lot of my family has a background in agriculture. Most of my family still is in agriculture in India. And it was a huge opportunity for me to work with business partners and stakeholders across Southeast Asia. So I worked with partners in the Philippines and Singapore. For me, it was a big reality check because I went from schooling and taking exams to actually being thrust into the real world. And you realize that, God, I don't know anything, let alone, the things that they're talking about. It's also an understanding of the world from a business perspective and lens, where everything needs to make sense financially and also in terms of delivering benefit for all of the effort and the cost that goes into doing a particular activity. And that was new to me. And so many of these colleagues and mentors came from a rich US educational background. They had studied either finance or business in the US, and they brought all of those educational snippets and their experience back to Asia, to Southeast Asia in particular. So for me, that was really inspiring. And I think that's what sparked the idea of maybe I should try this too. Maybe I should learn in the US and follow the footsteps of these colleagues and mentors that I looked up to. So that's what sparked my interest in pursuing a degree in the US and particularly business in the US.
Great. That sort of summarizes my memories of our initial conversations.
Yes, that's what led me to you. To be precise, it led me to Shri, who is consulting. She was helping students find their footing in the US, find their space in the US, educational setting. So I think that was how that was my perception of what you did. At least that's what you did for me.
Excellent. So it's I do joke sometimes and say that Madeline just decided to follow me because what she's referring to was my prior employment as an advisor with Education USA. So in your particular countries, if people are interested, you can look up that organization. But I got the opportunity to move to Syracuse, and Madeline decided she's going to follow me. And I think I want to know more as we go through this presentation and session of how it has led to other things for you in your life, right? Like the journey afterwards. So I know up to the point when you were in the program, and then to hear more about the journey afterwards. Okay, so Mariam, you came into the program in a different route, and you came through the Fulbright scholarship opportunity. And from the Republic of Georgia, you were the first student at the Whitman School of Management's MBA program to be from Georgia. So let's talk about you and listen to your background and story, starting with your undergrad degree and your pursuit from there.
Thanks, Rhi, and thanks everyone for your time. Well, again, I'm Mariam. I'm originally from country of Georgia. When I was in US, a lot of people would confuse and think I was from state of Georgia, but actually it's a small country in the cross of Europe and Asia. So I was born and grown up there. I was actually born in the family of science and research. So my mother was physics teacher. My father was geography professor. My sister went to environmental policy. So for me, it was also a bit random that I decided to go to business and finance. And the reason was very simple. I was just good at math and technical things. So at that point, it seemed like, okay, it could be a good opportunity for me to continue my trajectory towards that direction. So I did my bachelor's degree in Georgia, in University of Georgia. And actually, when I was still in my bachelor's degree, my sister got a scholarship from Oxford University, and she did her master's there, and she took me for her graduation. So I attended her graduation ceremony, and it was like first real inspiration for me that I really wanted to, okay, at that point decided I want to do it too. I want to go abroad and do my master's abroad. And in the beginning, I was thinking more still towards Europe and UK, and I started researching a bit more. And when I was researching, in the end, I wanted to do MBA, and most best quality MBAs at that point, also like 2-year MBAs, were more concentrated in US. And for me, it also sounded super exciting to go that far and get all that experience, not only from career, but also from personal experience perspective. So that's where I really decided that I wanted to give that a go. It was through Fulbright program. I think I can talk a bit more later, but for us Georgians, it was almost impossible to afford ourselves to do really MBA in US. So this was a Fulbright scholarship that came out in Georgia. So they were basically picking a couple people per year to fully fund the program. In the first try, I got rejected. I tried again in 2016 for the 2017 round, and that's where I really tried my best. And luckily, I was selected as a scholar, and that's where my MBA trajectory really started on. So that's a little bit about my background.
That's great. So already, I think there are a couple of threads in both your stories that we can see clearly. You started out in a tech field, or with a tech bent of mind, and quantitative training, I should say, rather. And you both have experienced a sort of rejection in your first attempts at something, which then led to, I would like to say, a deeper exploration of potentially looking at how to overcome that and pursue something in a different direction and take it forward. So you already experienced a little bit of beginnings of resilience training, I should say, right? Without
true.
Probably recognizing that that's what you were doing in a way. Would you agree? Or what's your opinion?
I can go ahead on this one. I would definitely agree. And in the beginning, it was a bit demotivating. But I'm really grateful that I always tried still my second time. And it's kind of a theme around my life, because first my job was like in Deloitte in Georgia. So I was rejected at the first point. So it was on the second try that I got there. And then same thing happened in Fulbright. And currently I'm working in Amazon. I was rejected first time in Amazon, so I tried again. So kind of I got reinforced that if I try and if I really want to do it, it still happens at some point. So I am convinced now that I should never give up. So that's kind of been statistics in my life. So I definitely agree. And Syracuse experience actually even proved that point further during my 2 years. So I can talk a bit more about that later.
Sure. Madeline, do you want to add anything to that? Or
I at this point, I think from like the people you meet, the kind of experiences you hear about, the stories you hear about, I think this is everybody's story. And what makes someone a success, or what makes someone happy at the end of these stories, is the fact that they recognize how to learn from these rejections, and they recognize how to strengthen themselves, and then find opportunities that are really for them. I think it like resilience training, I think it takes practice. I think it takes a lot of patience. But I feel like eventually everyone finds what it is for them. And we all get there.
as my professor in grad school used to remind me, you can wallpaper your room with rejection letters. So chin up and move on. And so that has been my motto in life. Okay, so let's focus a little bit. We talked a little bit in general about your trajectory trajectory, your pursuits, your, a little bit about your educational training, your quant backgrounds, and then you came into a quantitative focused MBA program. So let's talk about your entry into the MBA program. Like, how did you specifically hear about Whitman? And I know each of you has had I mean, obviously with your different trajectories, with the Fulbright option, it works a little differently. And so you probably heard it from your advisor, but I'm curious to see, like, what did you learn when you heard about Whitman and you decided to zero in on that MBA program? Go ahead.
I can get us started on that.
Sure.
Yeah, so I heard about Whitman from you. It was not on my radar when I first started my search because it's a huge maze to navigate, right? There are so many options, and everything is a good option. So I think I heard from you, and for me, there were a couple of things that were really interesting about the program. One was the program in itself, that it was it brought a lot of international students to the arena, but it also gave you the opportunity to be closer to a big city like New York, while being protected from the noise of New York. And the other thing for me was the other schools within Syracuse University. So since I was very fresh from my public administration attempts, the Maxwell School was a huge attraction for me. I thought I had decided I wanted a business background, but I didn't want to let go of my interest in public administration. And the more you research about Syracuse, then I found out about Newhouse, and media at that point was something that I was kind of getting interested in. It hadn't become a full-fledged interest, but having that option also made a difference for me to zero in on Syracuse. And I checked, I think with you and with advisors, that they told me that I could pick courses from different schools and then make my MBA my own. So that was, for me, the biggest reason why I chose Syracuse in the end.
Okay, great. Mariam?
Yeah, thanks. So as you mentioned, my story is a little bit different. So as I already mentioned, I in the end was a Fulbright scholar from Georgia, which, just for a background, means that you don't get to necessarily choose university yourself. You have a placement officer. And as long as you pass initial GMAT and other, like you write all those motivational letters, etc., and then your placement officer works with different schools and different universities. So for me, Syracuse, I had interview, actually, a kind of online interview with Whitman School, but I had some interviews with other schools as well. And I didn't really know until the end where I was going. So in the end, they called me, you're going to Syracuse. And I was actually at that point very excited because meanwhile, I was also researching the universities I've been interviewing with, and I had a very positive feedback from all different angles when I researched about it. It was new for me, to be honest. I haven't really heard that much about Syracuse prior to that, but I got really excited, and in the end, it exceeded my expectations as well. So that was not necessarily my choice because of the design of the program, but in the end, it worked out pretty well. So I think that's kind of a bit different angle.
Yeah, great. So it's just the way to sort of highlight, listening to these stories helps, students or the audience essentially understand you could sometimes get into a program and a trajectory that's not necessarily of your first choice or your initial inspiration, but then there are ways in which that could be the point that turns your life around. And so having said that, I want to address something which I think also popped up in one of the questions in the chat here. Is this specifically the program only meant for women? So no, that is not the case, but we do have two women alumni today who are going to share their experiences. So I want to move through this now channel specifically into your experiences at Whitman with respect to the courses, because I know both of you went into different specialization areas. I'll let you introduce that yourself so that I'm not doing all the speaking for you. But I'm curious, Madeline, let's start with you with your specialization areas and then any specific courses that come to mind that you enjoyed during your time as a student.
Yeah, so I specialized in marketing and in entrepreneurship. So when I came to the MBA, I was focused on just entrepreneurship because that was my work experience, my background, and I wanted to really zero in on that. But I think the first semester, the first few classes of the marketing course, and I was sucked in. It it opened a very new world for me, and it's a new way of thinking that I hadn't been exposed to before, but had experienced all my life. You're always exposed to marketing and advertising and communications without realizing that's what's going on. And that kind of opened my eyes to looking at the world differently. And I really enjoyed the space that the courses provided for us to think about our lived experience from different parts of the world and talk about, let's say we talked about our ad programs that we've seen in our native countries, in our native languages, and how that shaped our lives, our thinking, our attitude. And you hear that about from students across different parts of the world. They share how marketing activities have in many ways influenced their lives. And for me, that was interesting. I thought it was a little powerful, and I wanted to go down that route. And it hasn't stopped. I continue to work in the field, and every day I think there is new things to learn, new things to be surprised by, and I don't think I'll be turning back anytime soon.
It's great.
And in terms
Mariam,
of
what
courses,
about you?
sorry,
Sorry. Go ahead.
No,
Let's
you'd
hit
asked about-
Mariam's focus in her
Yep.
specialization area, and then we'll come back to specific courses. Is that okay?
Yes, perfect.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, in my case, actually, I wasn't aware that we could actually choose 2 concentrations. So it was a nice surprise for me. I thought in the beginning it would be just one. So I was more thinking in terms of finance because also my background was mostly in finance before. And then it was kind of recently launched specialization of business analytics at that point. And when I first attended the course, I really liked it. So after thinking for a month, I decided to pursue business analytics and finance concentration both together. And towards the second year also I was teaching assistant for business analytics course as well. So that also was a nice segue to that concentration.
That's great. So let's stay with you for a second, because you just brought up something which is one of the USPs of the Whitman School of Management, that within a short span of time, we're talking about Madeline graduated 2016. Mariam, you graduated 2019. So you started the program in 2017, and it was at that time that the business analytics specialization itself came in and was arranged or offered as a specialization. When Madeline was still a student in the MBA program, it was offered initially, the courses were being offered, a couple of introductory courses and comprehensive courses. So within a short span of time, there is innovation happening at the school, right? And now we actually have a lot more dual degree programs, joint degree programs that have come up. So if you go to the website, you'll see a lot of different things which were not possibly there when either of you were at Whitman. So it's a very exciting point to note that there are possibilities of little things, just that someone like me who's there at the school every day, from my perspective, is just like, oh, okay, we have another innovation. But then when I actually put it in the context of 2 recent graduates, it sort of pops up as a huge highlight, isn't it? Just a big difference.
Yeah, definitely. And those 2 kind of go hand in hand in the end. Like even in my daily work life now, I see really a lot of overlap between business analytics tools and understanding of that deeply and finance. So I think it was a nice choice to go on both sides. So definitely that was a good option for it.
Yeah. So do you have any specific classes that you remember? Any particular courses, professors?
So we had business analytics class from Donald Harter himself. And I actually remember one point because he used to say that, I talk with a lot of companies, and the first thing everyone tells me is that they want interns and new grads to know pivot tables. So we were really trying to understand bits and pieces of how efficiently and effectively work on pivot tables. And that's just so true, because since then, when I graduated and I worked in 2 different companies already, like this is is really like core thing that in the beginning we expect everyone to really work on that well. So that just some point that I remember from his classes, and also some other courses, financial modeling from Ravi Shukla, which was in the second year actually, but that was super important and insightful for me particularly because first of all, I wasn't really used to working in teams and groups prior to coming to US because culture is fully different, and we were having a lot of group classes and group workshops in financial modeling and learning a lot from each other as well. And those models actually also helped quite a bit after graduation as well, because we learned very interesting tricks and tools. So I think those two classes really were hands-on and helped me, and I'm seeing those impact in my daily work life now. So those will be my highlights, even though I had some other classes that I really enjoyed as well.
Okay, that's great. Madeline?
No, I just picked up on what Mariam was talking about, teamwork and working in groups. For me, again, it was quite new. It's not how I trained as a student back in India. And it's something that I notice more and more in my work now, that most projects, they happen in collaboration with so many different people and stakeholders. And for me, the MBA program really trained me to work with people, and people that come from different backgrounds, different countries, and different perspectives. So it was
And personalities.
Oh, that's a huge one. It's
Yes.
it's a training, I think, on a daily basis, because every course is a team-based activity course, right? And it teaches you to not only understand your own strengths and room for improvement, but you start to recognize where your teammates can really contribute to a project, or where you could support a little more. And that kind of training over the period of 2 years has really, really helped in most of my jobs that I've had since graduating. And it's something that you don't actively recognize until someone points it out, like Mariam just did. But it's something that I think I picked up from the training at Syracuse. But in terms of coursework, I think most of my marketing courses, I think each of them was a lot of fun. It was something that I was really looking forward to. It was a lot of new ideas, people that were sharing a lot of stories that really made sense. But one of the courses that I did was working with the Entrepreneurship Hub with Professor Johan Wickland, and we did a project on ADHD. And I was really interested in it. So I knew he was writing papers, he was publishing, he's chairing a lot of these discussions globally. And I wanted to be a part of that discussion. So I asked him if I could write a research paper, and he was so open and so encouraging, but he did not warn me about what a task that would be.
Of course he didn't.
But the kind of support I got from his research students, from himself, the others in the department, I ended up finishing a paper. And it is like, it teaches you to be rigorous and thorough, but it also teaches you to communicate a potentially complex subject to a larger audience in a way that it's approachable, it's intelligible. And I continue to remember that paper even now.
Don't you know that we staff and faculty, we like to spark curiosity, but then we don't necessarily give you all the answers right up front so that you can discover them on your own. Okay, so let's move from there to, both of you've mentioned a couple of times about the different roles that you've explored after graduation, and I know each of you has had again slightly different trajectory. Madeline has had multiple opportunities or random positionings, but they're not really random. They do actually form a picture. So let's start with a little bit tying that in while you're discussing that, also looking at the impact of the MBA on your personal growth, because you did quite a bit of work outside of the courses. You did, both of you, again, were involved in student clubs, and I'll let you talk about that, because that was, I think, a nice revelation to you when you two met each other. So, yeah. So let's talk about that. So, Madeline, do you want to start?
Yep. I'll get us started. So at that point, I wanted to stay in the US, and I was looking for jobs exclusively in the US and even more exclusively in New York. I think it was a time in my life where I thought that was where I was going to be. And it did work out. So initially, I think everyone goes through this. You apply to everywhere, and then you go through some interviews. You see that sometimes it clicks quickly. It clicks on your first application. I know friends where they've applied to one job and they ended up there and they continue to be there. And for some of us, we apply to 800 and then you find your fit. Right. So I started as an intern at an ad agency in New York. And for me, it so happened that my manager, my mentor, left 3 months after I joined. So at that point, I was the only person who knew what he was doing. And he was also from Syracuse. So he was from Newhouse. So we had a lot of connection. We bonded quite well about given our background. And he really trained me to be in the works of it. And then I started managing all of the marketing programs at the agency. And then I worked there for 2 years and I ended my career there as head of marketing. And in the middle there, I had an opportunity to work as a consultant for the Economist newspaper group. And it was an opportunity I didn't want to let go and pass by. And I think I was very privileged that both my workplaces understood the need for me to do that. So I got the opportunity to take a pause at the agency and then go to the Economist, work there for 6 months on a very specific project, and then come back to the agency. End of all of this, we tried the H-1B visa. I think it did not go through the lottery system. And the agency wasn't able to apply for the visa again. So I got a different position with a different company. And this was a startup that was very new. It was huge news at that time. They were called Notel, and they were in the real estate business. But what they were looking for was someone who had experience in core marketing and who could really bring new audiences and create demand around a product or a service, which is what I learned to do through my educational background at Whitman, where I took new product innovation courses, tying them with marketing those new innovations. So that educational background with that little bit of work experience I gained at The Economist and Catch-24, I fit right into the new startup, although it was a completely different industry. And we tried the H-1B again. It didn't go through. We tried a different visa. I think we tried the H-4 visa, which is a training visa. And months of waiting, it did not go through. And then I think in 2018, it just seemed like none of these visas were working. And I said, okay, I'm going to go back home. But when I went back home, I went back to the agency I used to work for. And I said, listen, I'm going to go back home. I know you don't yet have someone to replace my role, my position. I'd be happy to do it if you could support a work from home arrangement. So this was in 2018 before COVID, and I had already started working from home. And for me, I think the reason why they agreed to let me work from home was because I had created that relationship with all of our clients, our stakeholders and internal teams. And reflecting on it, I think that kind of relationship building came from my experiences at SU. And it was outside of just the Whitman programs where teamwork was already something that's instilled in you. I was working with all of these other student organizations. And I think the biggest impact that I can talk about right now was the impact that the Whitman Women in Business organization had on me. I started as a member, and then when I finished as president of the club, and what it did was it created a safe space for women to come and talk about your experiences, talk about new things that women could try, barriers we could break. It was very empowering in many ways, very inspiring as well. And luckily for me, the year I was president, we had an opportunity to collaborate across different schools within SU to host a big event in partnership with the women's veterans. I think it was an organization at the time. Yes, in upstate New York. So it was it was all of upstate New York, in partnership with Syracuse University. And I think we threw a huge event, which also went into becoming a gala for the veterans organization. There were other nonprofits that came and participated. It was almost like a whole of society kind of event, happening inside of SU. SU hosted this event, but it also was hosted by different organizations, NGOs, other civil society participants. And it was such a success that it got picked up by Toyota. And I think the lady that worked at Toyota was in charge of recruitment. She came to the event as a donor, and then she recognized the work that all of the students were doing. And she came to Whitman and she said, I want to hire from this group. So I think it created that pathway for recruitment as well. And for me personally, that collaborating across different age groups, different demographics, different functions and roles, I think I learned to do that in a very safe space within SU. And I continue to do that now, even in my job. And I think that's the biggest personal impact that Whitman and SU had on me.
It's great. It's amazing to see the growth. When other people tell you that you've grown and you've changed, sometimes you take it with a grain of salt. Okay, sure, you're being nice to me. But when you recognize it yourself, that's where the true impact lies, right? So, Mariam, let's hear it from you.
Yeah, definitely. So for me, actually, everything was in SU a game changer for me, because it was first time leaving my country, leaving my family, and go to a completely new place and live alone and be in a like new environment with multinational people as well. So in addition to all this academic experience that I got, I think it was really a lot of personal experience as well. And to your point, I was also actually in Whitman Women Business Club as a president, and we had some other opportunities as well. I was part of the Toastmasters, and we were also participating in different business case competitions and things like that, which really provided completely different perspective on and widened my broadened my mindset as well. And I would say that it really helped me to become more confident. I will repeat again, teamwork was a big change for me. So I really appreciated the value that collaboration brings with different teams and different stakeholders. And I learned that persistence and resilience is the key. And no matter what, if you work hard and if you really try to achieve your goal, you will do that. So I think a lot of soft skills that I gained, I became more confident again. And in terms of the work, similar to Medlin, I was also struggling a bit because of partially my Fulbright requirements as well, because I couldn't really stay in US for more than 1 year after graduation. So as you can imagine, companies will not be really interested in very short-term employment as well. So I have to say that I had a mentor at school as well, Bruce, and there was a mentorship program, and he was extremely supportive and he coached me a lot too. So I always say big thanks to him. So he helped me as well to have networking with his company at that point, which was in upstate New York, Superior Plus Propane. And I had a meeting with the director. They were looking for a financial analyst exactly at that point. So it really matched my experience. They were asking about my coursework and my overall work experience. So it was a good match. So I actually started first a full-time job there in upstate New York after graduation. And then these are a chain of events, right? So first I had super interesting projects, a couple of them there. I wasn't even thinking to change work at that point. I was so happy there. And Amazon recruiter themselves reached out to me through LinkedIn and asked me if I was interested in a position. And that was actually the position I was rejected in the beginning. But I was like, okay, they reached out to me, so they gave me a chance. So probably I should give it another go. And then I tried to apply again and continued afterwards. But in the end, I think the 2 years that I spent in Syracuse, together with its academic and non-academic experience, completely changed me as a person in a good way. So it really helped me grow. I had a lot of learnings, I have to say, some failures, some challenges as well. But in the end, those really helped a lot to build my character, build my work ethics, and also develop these skills, both soft and hard, that you really need at workplace. So
that's great.
huge credits to SU for sure.
Yeah, thank you both for sharing that, because usually what happens as students, and I hope some of my current students are paying attention, is that when you are in the thick of the program, you get so focused in completing your assignments, preparing for your tests, your midterms, and focusing so much on your grades and your GPA, that you tend to forget what is the long-term investment in yourself through an educational program and an educational pursuit. There are things that can be measured, which come out on your transcript, which come out in your test scores. And also, you know, when you decide to apply for jobs, obviously everybody's thinking about how much money am I going to make, and will I be able to pay my bills, and where am I going to live, and how am I, you know, budgeting, and all of that stuff, which are practical needs. But I think what gets left unsaid, like you mentioned, a lot of soft skills that you learn happened and began in the classroom when you were working in teams, dealing with different personalities and also different perspectives of students, and all coming together and everybody learning in that same environment and in a safe space, right? But also the things that cannot truly be quantified, in terms of how much your resilience has grown from your initial setbacks in your undergraduate and to your initial pursuits, and you just keep continuing with each setback, and you call it failures. I like to say, yes, much more life lessons and challenges, right? And you also, I think, over time, learn to recognize as you grow and evolve that it is not so much a negative, and there is another side to that coin, and that brings me to it. Your greatness was not to be found in the space where you thought it was to be in the US, right, after your education, but it was to be found in a global setting. And so let's move towards your current roles. And talk about, you know, specifically what is your role at Amazon. Let's start with Mariam, and you know, talk specifically about maybe your day-to-day responsibilities. What do you do? You're currently working from the office, so
yeah, I'm currently from an EU office. Yes,
so let's start with that.
Cool. Well, again, Amazon is the second full-time job after graduation. First, I was doing working in upstate New York, and then 2020 February, I moved to Seattle to join Amazon. It was a bit unfortunate in the sense that after 2 weeks, COVID broke out, so I didn't really get a chance to go back to office. So I was working remotely. Interestingly, I came back to Syracuse, and I was working from Syracuse for 2 months because I love Syracuse. And then because of my visa requirements, I had to leave the country. But team was very supportive, so they actually helped me to move to Luxembourg, which is headquarters of Amazon. And I joined initially surface transportation NA, North America, and then I moved to surface transportation in Europe. So surface transportation is a bit vague term, but what it means is actually we're looking at whole internal network of different warehouses, sort centers, and all this complex chain of nodes which enables us to deliver our packages to customers. And I'm particularly on the finance side of that. So I'm actually finance manager of surface transportation EU fields. Also, I want to note that I have changed role multiple times, even though I still stayed within the same wider org of surface transportation. So what happened is that from one role, I was a bit expanding my scope to look at a bit further, from a bit further angle as well. 2 weeks ago, I again changed. So currently, my scope is EU surface transportation, central planning, reporting, CapEx, and sustainability. And I want to note that sustainability is one of the most exciting areas to work in Amazon, because actually we have a public commitment to decarbonize our network by 2040, and also by 2030 we should already be big on this zero carbon glide path. So we have a lot of ambitious initiatives to go through electric vehicles and try to find sustainable alternatives for regular network that we use. So that's currently what I'm looking into from financial perspective. So I'm finance manager for that pillar.
Excellent. What about you, Madeline?
She sounds really impressive. It's a tough
She
act to
is
follow.
impressive.
Yeah, it's a very tough
So are
act to
you.
follow.
You're Whitman alumni. Of course you're impressive.
So when I moved back to India, I kept my remote job, and then I started working for a different company, which coincidentally was a software engineering company. So they were really interested in the fact that software engineering didn't intimidate me because of my undergrad education, but I had the technical and business outlook with the marketing and the new business launching and product introduction capabilities that I had learned over 5-6 years. So I was in the job for about a little more than a year, and I was recruiting to grow my team. And at that point, I thought I had already come full circle because I was finally putting my undergrad degree to use. But then it happened that I hadn't yet come full circle. So I was recruiting, and I saw this position that I'm in right now for an officer within the UN system. And it just, for some reason, I thought I should try it. And I was, it's just, I think when you're building that resilience that you talk about, Shri, about not taking no for an answer, and also keeping your doors always open. Your eyes are always open to new opportunities. You're always looking to see how else you can grow and where else you can bring your strengths to and contribute to. I think when you have that attitude, and luckily for me at that phase in life, I had the privilege and the space to have that attitude. So I saw the position. It was calling for a digital strategy officer who would basically come and plan the strategy on how to launch public-facing campaigns, but for this UN system. So I saw it and I thought maybe, why not give it a shot? And I did. And very, very luckily, I'm here. So what I do is I work for the UN Refugee Agency, UNHCR, and the agency is mandated with protecting people that flee war, violence, and persecution. And the campaigns that I work on, they faced public audiences, like large global audiences. And we try to communicate about our mandate, about the work that we do, try to raise awareness, build trust, and eventually build advocates and donors who continue to support our work. And my role within this team is to help deliver all of these campaigns using digital strategy, using digital marketing techniques. So for me, it's a perfect blend of all of the experience I've had across different industries, but also tying it back to what I really wanted to do with my life when I was 21. So it has, in a way, been my own sweet ending.
It's not the ending yet.
Not yet.
It's a destination point. It's
Yes.
a destination point.
It's a pit stop for me.
It's a pit stop. That's right. The journey still continues. So this is great. I want to be a little mindful of time, and I know there are some questions. So I want to bring it back, since we've now gone full circle about, where did you start your education and how did you pursue the MBA, the courses, your particular focus areas, and then how it ties in with your current responsibilities, what you're doing. So let's bring it back to the individuals. So the people, the two individuals behind this whole persona of business school education and business professionals, young women in the corporate settings, who are you when you're not working officially in that title? Name one or two things that you do or that have become a part of your day-to-day and have become part of your own personal identity, if you will, for yourself, that the things that are important to you. when you are not necessarily digital strategy officer at the UN Refugee Agency or the finance manager for EU and overseeing all of these important portfolios. So let's go, Maddie.
Yeah, I have, I'm celebrating 10 years of a regular yoga practice. In many ways, I think it has been the reason why I am who I am. It's a space to, I think it really helps me quiet for a while, because if you remember, and I'm sure you do, I'm not a quiet person. I like doing a lot of different things. You know, there are some kind of people that really enjoy stress, really enjoy deadlines, really enjoy that kind of push. I think I'm one of those people. But
you do know your manager is watching this recording, right? I mean, this
she
live
knows
show
already,
Yeah.
and she's very glad I have my in the morning. No, but
So
it is a good balance that and it's also an easy thing that I have taken with me since India, since Chennai. And no matter where I am or what I'm doing, I have that kind of space to go and quiet everything down and then maybe get some perspective, or just maybe have a good laugh, or just find that release in any way that's happening. But outside of all of that philosophy, I really, really have started picking up on travel again. I used to do that while I was in the US. We had a group of friends that we met at Whitman. We traveled almost, I think I want to say almost everywhere, except for like places that we just couldn't reach. We've tried to cover a lot of it, and I've picked up on that habit again. I still keep in touch with them. We still try and plan. And I recently had a friend from Whitman come and stay with me here in Copenhagen. We're planning a trip again this year. Hopefully it'll happen. But it is something that I continue to do and I want to keep doing for a while.
Yes, you can go to Luxembourg. There's another
I
Whitman
would
alum
love
there.
to go in the summer.
You definitely should. You're not that far.
Oh, thank you.
Great. So Mariam, what about you?
Yeah, so I would say I'm a very active person, so I really like to keep myself active. So I love music, I love dancing. So I'm working on vintage dancing, which I started in US actually. So I dance a lot of Lindy Hop and those kind of 30s and 40s dances. So that's kind of my big hobby that I really enjoyed, and have started it in 2019 in Rochester actually, when I was doing my first job in upstate New York. So I'm listening to the music all the time, almost. Well, and when I'm driving, when I'm at home, when I'm cooking. Oh, I love cooking, by the way. I love eating as well. So I really enjoy the process of cooking and baking as well. And similar to Mehdi, I love traveling. So I haven't really done that much lately, which I need to improve. But I really enjoy seeing new places. I love meeting new people. I actually really enjoy being with people, my loved ones, my friends, also learning and talking about interesting topics with new people I meet in my lives. And yeah, I really try to keep myself active. And I would say probably outside of work, I don't really come across as a finance manager. So sometimes it's surprising for people, oh, you're a finance manager in Amazon. So, but yeah, that's a little bit about what I enjoy outside work.
That's great. So just to throw a little more insight in there, the term that we use at business school for all these things that you're talking about, both of you, meeting new people and doing new things, it's called networking. And you did learn it in school. So
that's also a learned skill, you're right.
It's something I learned at Whitman to talk to new people without an agenda, or maybe with one.
There you go. Okay, so I think that brings us to the end of our time to provide an overview of the trajectory of two young women who came into a business school, come from different backgrounds, and pursue their MBA at the Whitman School of Management, Syracuse University. And it's been such a privilege again for me personally to sort of organize this session and have this conversation. And I thought I kind of knew quite a bit about both of you, but now I've added more layers. So don't be surprised if I reach out again and ask some questions. But it's been wonderful to navigate this conversation and take it forward. Stefania, it's back to you.
Yes, so thank you so much to have shared this experience with us. It was really, really interesting. And we also get a lot of questions, actually. Let's dive into some of them.
Sure.
For example, one that I really like, I'm really curious about the answer is, have you ever had to work harder to prove your abilities as a woman?
Actually, I have not, to be honest. I guess I was lucky in that sense because I don't know, I don't recall in my experience that I would be biased because I wasn't delivering enough or was needed to prove myself because I was a woman. Especially when I came to US, maybe I was expecting at that point that there is some bias, etc. But personally, I have not. So I think that's a positive experience from my side that I can say.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't recall necessarily feeling disadvantaged because I'm a woman. But I think what really helped in situations where, there are many, many situations, and from my experience, where you walk into a room and you don't see any other woman there, especially for me in the software engineering field. All of my colleagues were men. I was trying to recruit women, but we didn't get enough women or female applicants applying for tech jobs. So in those spaces, when you're maybe just the only woman in the room, I think what really helps is knowing your stuff, like doing your reading, doing the preparation before you go into a meeting, knowing what you want to say and being clear about it. And just, I think you learn through experience as well to take up that space, to have your voice heard in situations like that. And irrespective of your gender, I think it's a good muscle to build. Really knowing your stuff and becoming an authority in that, I think it really helps in any kind of situation.
Thank you so much for sharing. This is really interesting for me, for real. It's really inspiring also to hear your different opinions and different words at the end. So we're going with a question that is connected, let's say, and it is, do you think that the US is a place where I can feel free and safe as a woman?
I think, yeah, I mean,
So I will start with laying out a little bit of a context, and then maybe you two can share your personal settings. Unfortunately, we live in an urban environment, irrespective of where we are in the world, right? So there is a certain sense of self-awareness that we have to always have, that is not necessarily just restricted to one gender per se, or one particular ethnic group, or one particular nationality. As human beings, we just have to be self-aware. And it's not even so much necessarily that you think about being harmful. It's like cities are becoming more modernized. And so there's, if you come to India, suddenly you have to watch out for traffic hitting you from all sides. And then you go into a different location, there are other things that you have to, be mindful of. So self-awareness in general, and being aware of your surroundings in general, I think is one way to look at it. That's one perspective. The other part of this is your purpose for when you are going into a new location. In this particular case, both of you, Madeline and Mariam, you came to the US to study as students. So you came into an educational environment, which was different from your own backgrounds and your own prior educational contexts. So there was the system itself was different that you had to navigate, right? So the curriculum and the coursework and how the classes were organized, how much group work you had to do. So I think in that sense, that's a different type of an environmental awareness, or within like a subculture's awareness that you needed to have as well. And then you had the third component within that, which was you were going to be interacting with people that you didn't know you were going to be interacting with. You didn't know what to expect. And so there is a general awareness that you always have to have. So situating it within this, what would you say in response to the question?
Whether is a safe space to go
Yeah.
to. Yeah. I mean, I completely agree with everything you've said, Shri, because I mean, I grew up in India. It is safe in many ways. It is unsafe in many ways as well. And you go to the US and you realize that the culture is different. So safety takes a completely different meaning. And unsafe also means different things. We unfortunately still continue to live in a world where women and other minorities still face issues anywhere you go. But I think you learn to set your own boundaries. And for me, going to school, that context helped me by providing a space where I can learn what my boundaries are, how much I want to talk to people, what I want to say to them, how much I'm going to allow other people within my space, and in what capacity. I think you learn that over time. I think you learn that with age. You learn that with experience, and irrespective of where you go in the world, you're going to have to learn it somewhere or somehow. So
Yeah.
I'm glad I got to learn it in a safe space.
Yeah.
Yeah, I actually agree with what Madi said. And Shri, to your point, I think context matters, right? So coming to school environment is different if you were going alone to work somewhere in a different setting. So in that sense, I think it was safe for me as well, because first of all, there were a lot of international students and also other women in this similar situation. So I didn't feel unsafe. I think what I remember from US was I had to be aware when I would go out when it was dark, for example, which never happened in Georgia. So I never need to think about, okay, it's 10 p.m. it's dark, so be aware if you go alone outside. So things like that. So I had to really be aware of those kind of things. So that's important to note. But otherwise, I think school environment was pretty much safe for me. I agree actually what Maddie said in terms of those boundaries, because you learn it. And I think it comes naturally as you grow. So
yeah. Right. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And then we also have two questions, so one for Madeline and one for Mariam. So I will make the first to Mariam. What's about the cultural shock of going from Georgia to US?
yeah, I used to get that question a lot actually. I don't know. I actually didn't have that much of a cultural shock, which was shock to me because I expected to have a big cultural shock. Yeah, I think one thing was people were super friendly and super nice to me when I came to US. And then I also figured out it's an American way. Everyone is nice. Everyone says, have a good day. Everyone asks, how are you? And things like that. In the beginning, I was like telling my stories. Okay, if someone was just having, how's your day? I would just tell the whole story. Then I decided that it was more like a cultural thing. So I found it surprisingly nice that people were really open and nice and friendly. Also, one thing that I really appreciate about US was I could see that everyone had opportunity to achieve their dreams and goals based on competence. So in other countries might not be exactly like that. And what I saw in US was if you work hard and if you are really competent in what you are doing, at some point you really have a good chance of achieving it. So I think I really appreciate that throughout my years in US. And again, the friendliness of my professors, my classmates, and my colleagues afterwards. I think I always tell to my friends outside US that I had extremely positive experience. Maybe it's personal experience, but I really had a very positive experience. So that was kind of a highlight actually.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Mariam. And now let's go with Madeline. They are asking, how did you reach your actual job? I always wanted to work in the UN system.
Yeah. I applied on LinkedIn actually. And it was exams and interviews, and then I got here. But the careers page are usually up to date, and the opportunities really are open to anyone and everyone. So if you apply to everything that you think fits your role, your interest, and I'm sure something will click.
Amazing. Okay, so thank you so much. Unfortunately, we run out of time. And so thanks again to our panelists to be with us today, and thanks to everyone to have joined us, to have been so curious and responsive with all your questions. I hope you learned a lot and that this webinar helped you to discover more about Syracuse University. So if you're interested in receive our certificate of attendance, you can click on the link that I've just sent in the chat. And we will share the recording with you in the following days, so please keep an eye on your email. I also wanted to ask to our panelists if you want to leave a message before say goodbye to our students.
Maddie?
I just want to wish everyone the best of luck. If you're pursuing an MBA, it is a huge personal decision. So sit with it, think about it, pick the choice that makes the best sense for you and your long-term goals. And I would just say have fun. It's a huge adventure. And if you're embarking on it, just be open to everything that's ahead for you. And all my best wishes to everyone.
Thanks, Maddie. First of all, thanks everyone for your time, for listening in. I hope you learned something, got some insightful insights as well. I also would recommend, if people are interested to do MBA, I really think it's a game changer in life, especially if it's a 2-year full program with all this campus experience and with all these non-curriculum activities as well. So strongly recommend it from my personal experience as well. And overall, I wish you all the best. And my advice to everyone usually is just to try to maximize and take benefit of all the opportunities you have in your life. Even if it sounds very challenging, just go use it and don't be afraid to learn or fail. There are no failures, so there are just learnings, as Shri said. So want to reinforce that message from my side as well.
That's great. And as always, it's something that I have begun to reinforce in every session that I do and in conversations with my students. Always take some time to introspect. There is never, like I said, it's a destination point. It's not the destination. It's a journey, irrespective of which path you are on in life, whether you're thinking about your next job, whether you're thinking about quitting your job or pivoting careers, or even making a decision to sort of find your life partner. Everything is a pathway, and everything is a journey with its own beautiful adventures, but also a few roadblocks and challenges. So taking that time to introspect helps you find your authentic self, and then find meaning in whatever you decide to embark upon. And ultimately, when you approach it that way, when it really gets tough or things don't go the way you think they should go, you can sit back and say, I did introspect, I chose this, I can do this. It gives you a different kind of empowerment, as opposed to, I didn't really choose this path. Somebody else told me to do this. I shouldn't have listened to them. So, give yourself that little bit of time to introspect, and then the perspective changes. And then come to Whitman.
Okay, so thank you so much for sharing your experience, and thank you to be here with me. So it was a pleasure for me to host this webinar. I hope to see you again in the next webinar, and have a nice day. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye,
Again,
Thank you,
thanks. Bye-bye.
everyone. Bye-bye.